Here in 2016, most people would say that the scene/emo music and culture is fading and fading fast. But with groups such as Unicorns Killed My Girlfriend having viral videos at the moment, yes, that's a real thing, it's perhaps something where it is merely lying dormant and the next wave is getting ready to emerge. What a name for a band, by the way. Unicorns Killed My Girlfriend. What the hell is the next bill going to read? Sad Kids, Bad Kids, featuring the undercard of the Jeffrey Death Star, PewDiePie Stabbed My Ken Doll, and then, of course, the lovely, lovely sounds of Falling in Reverse Cleveland Steamered Me, and I loved it. Like, comment, subscribe, XD, rawr. So, as the next aspect of our 5 Reasons series, whenever it comes to genres, we take a look at those that don't exactly look at scene and emo music quite as favorably as those who love the genre and continue to this day. Here are 5 reasons that people hate scene/emo music and the culture that surrounds it. And we begin with number 5. Number 5 is that it's depressing, and this was one that you don't hear of as much these days, considering there has been a bit of a transformation of what these groups are all about. But during its height in the 2000s, this was something that you saw all the time. There was a lot of links with depression with emo/scene kids, and it was part of the trend, it seemed. Cutting was something that was always talked about, and now it's all of a sudden become a bit of an insult as opposed to something that was actually being aided by actual, conversations or education about why this is something that you shouldn't do or why this was actually happening. I wish my grass was emo so it would cut itself, blah blah blah. Like I said, you don't hear this so much, however it has now become a meme all of its own, where if you are associated in any way or look like an emo/scene queen of the days of old, or still one to this day, chances are they're going to immediately perceive you as depressing. Is it silly? Is it stupid? Yeah, it kind of is. Is it a reason why people avoid this, actual music, considering they want something with a little more substance? You bet your ass it still is. Number 4, it's not real emo, and scene is actually just trendy trash. This is actually going off of the very basis of both the genres and the culture to begin with. Emo itself was a style of music that began in the 1990s and had a little bit of a different makeup to it, no pun intended, than we actually got in the 2000s, where the boom really occurred. Bands such as Fugazi, bands such as Jimmy Eat World, and even some of the earliest versions of Death Cab for Cutie could be considered to be early versions of emotional music. Emotional music, as it stood, was really one that was based around the very concept of having emotions really be the prevailing idea, which is something that seems a bit strange to even conjure, considering you would think that emotions were a key part of music in the beginning, to begin with. However, what really differentiates it is really some sort of conversation that really doesn't even need to be had. What we got in the 2000s was something that was completely different. And the whole idea of scene queen is based off of a derogatory term from the 1970s glam scene, and really the whole fashion that was associated with it began in the UK and then just shipped over here to America thanks to popular sites such as YouTube and MySpace. Thanks a lot, Internet. We love you. Hearts, kisses, XD, rawr. Number 3, the music's not that good. Now, I'm known as a man that has a way with words, but this is all I really need to say in regard to this. In regard to the band Broken Side, somebody from the Warsaw Business Journal was able to describe their music in a way in which I could have never dreamed of doing so. And I'm going to read that for you right now, and really this is the perfect way to describe how many people feel about scene and emo music. So, this writer from the Warsaw Business Journal concluded, imagine an impassioned triceratops mating with a steam turbine, while off to the side, Daft Punk and the Bee Gees beat each other to death with skillets and spatulas. Imagine the sound that would make! Just try. Broken Side is kind of like that, except it also makes you want to jab your thumbs into your eyeballs and gargle acid. And the funny thing is that most bands, if they got a review like this, would probably, shake it off. These guys probably thought it meant that they made it. Number 2, Screamo. This can go with the whole idea that the music isn't all that good, but Screamo was actually something that was formulated based off of the new wave of emo music. We hear it a little bit now. It's sometimes confused with pop punk or post-hardcore. There's 1,001 different names that really seem to go for some of the same ideas. It's hard to differentiate it. Some people say it's hard to differentiate heavy metal subgenres, but let me tell you something. This is splitting some serious hairs with this garbage. Screamo, I guess, is taking the traditional idea of emo music that you heard from the first wave of the 2000s emo culture, whatever you want to call it, like the Fall Out Boys and whatever, and then you add screaming to it. So I guess bands like Falling in Reverse, Sleeping with Sirens, and all that would classify for this. I really don't know, principally because I really don't care. However, this is all music that tends to be ones that people just want to avoid if they're not already listening to it. That's right, you either love this or you hate it, and most people dislike it based around the whole concept of why do we need a bunch of screaming in this music? So basically the idea that so many people find to be a little bit rough around the edges is the fact that here are these folks that are perfectly A-OK, and they're just screaming their thoughts and their visions and their emotions, and that's just about it. Some people say that that's comparative to heavy metal and comparative to what some pop does and things like that, but wow. This is music that honestly has hurt some people's ears, I'm not going to lie. And I'm not talking about people that I know personally, it's based off of the research that I've done. The prevailing idea that Screamo is the main reason why they don't get into scene and emo because they can't stand the music, well, it's kind of funny whenever the music itself is the reason why people don't get into it, because that's kind of the reason why you shouldn't get into it, but here we are. Number one, it's a fashion statement. It's not totally all about the music. That's right, this is actually the biggest reason that people don't get into the music, is because of the fact that it's really just a fashion statement. Now, there was a famous song within this construct that said this ain't a scene, it's an arms race. You might as well just say this ain't a scene, it's a fashion culture, because that's what it started as, that's what it manifested itself as, and now there's music to go along with that. They were originally called trendies whenever they first came out in the UK and were looked down by a lot of people, considering they were combining elements from skater culture and goth culture, combining them together and really showcasing none of the ideas of either. So based around that, it became this sort of derogatory term that eventually took off and became this big thing. The culture itself is what has driven so many people batshit mad to almost hate the music before even listening to a single note, without even potentially even knowing a single artist or what they actually sound like. Maybe that's the best way to look at this. And considering, Unicorns Killed My Girlfriend are basically just telling everybody to shut the fuck up, and some chick is walking around with a baseball bat like that means anything. Ken Griffey Jr. did that too, and he could probably kick your ass 450 feet into the stands in left field. But either way, this culture is just one that it seems like it should be inclusive, but it's actually not inclusive. These are some of the most abrasive people that you're ever going to meet. They're really one that almost resembles more of a cult mentality to some individuals. Myself personally, I don't see that as much. I don't see this as a cult mentality. I see it more as just expression that has gone a little bit haywire, a bit out of control. It's almost become its own little sort of fashion race or arms race where they try to outdo one another, and the funny part about it is that in most cases, the more ridiculous that a get-up is, the less attractive somebody actually becomes. But yet, for some strange reason, it's almost becoming the new attraction point for many individuals. I don't quite get it. There's definitely a big poser culture that's out there as well, and that's not even just whenever it comes to the music itself, it's also whenever it comes to the culture itself and the clothing, and you're just doing that because I was doing it last week. It's very high school. This one that's just ripe with just tons of drama. Believe me, if you've had some folks in your town that have had this culture sort of ingrained in their philosophy, it's something where anytime you cruise social media, these are the ones that tend to have something to say, and they're not afraid to say it, but it's definitely something that probably would have been best left unsaid if you're really smelling what I'm cooking. Based around all of these different attributes of the culture itself, based around the fashion that goes along with it, the hot topic mall culture that was really prevailing during the 2000s and early portion of this decade is turned so many people off, and really it's been seen as a stopping point for, in some constructs, heavy music in general. For others, they instead jump to heavier music than that and immediately become anti-emo or anti-scene. It becomes a trend kill idea. Either that or some folks are not even willing to explore it based around the idea that they would rather just listen to pop or rap or something else, or just based around the idea that that's just not their scene, and they're immediately seen as lesser people based off of that. I know, that was definitely a mouthful, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that have a lot of things to say about that. However, those are 5 reasons that people apparently hate scene and emo music or culture. Myself personally, this list is accumulated from a lot of what I read, a lot of what I research about these topics. Myself personally, I was a little bit of an older gentleman whenever this whole thing became popular and saw the effect that it had on elements of my town, and it was one that really wasn't all that bad. It just seemed to be one that was more raked in drama and a lot of that not being willing to leave high school behind, as opposed to truly being a defamation on society. Instead, this is one, though, that in other locations has apparently become a problem to the point where people are unwilling to explore the music, and people within the music and within the culture are unwilling to explore anything else. What is it like, or what did you experience whenever this was at its boom? Let me know in the comments below. Is it something that you think is still out there in a large fashion, or is this instead one that is on the decline? Once again, let me know in the comments below. My name is coverkillernation, and I will talk to each and every one of you guys next time. Peace. Oh, I forgot. XD, rawr!